Hey guys, it's Dave. Happy Monday to you. Thank you for watching as always. Today I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper look at Intuitive Machines. It's a company that's gotten a lot of attention lately in the space industry, as they did have a moderately successful lunar landing attempt that got a lot of media coverage, had a lot of hype, and actually resulted in the stock pretty much 5xing over the period of about a month. So just a massive return. If you were a shareholder over that time, congratulations. Now, personally, I was not a shareholder. I will say, though, the team did impress me with their execution for a first lunar landing attempt. It can be very difficult. We've seen countries like Russia, Israel, India fail at landing on the moon, and Japan as well, of course. And it's a really difficult task. So they got quite far along for their first attempt. There was also another company that made the attempt just like a month before them. That company had a failure very early on, was not able to even attempt a landing, so that was unfortunate. But all that being said, it doesn't mean the company's a good investment just because I think their lunar lander is cool and the idea behind the company can be a little bit exciting. So I wanted to take a look at that today, see if I think it's worth putting some money into this company that's done so well recently or not. If you are interested in this type of content, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and like button as well to help out the channel. Thank you so much for everyone who's already subscribed and everyone who hits that like every single time. Very much appreciated. You guys are the real MVPs. Okay, with that out of the way, let's dive into Intuitive Machines. First off, just to talk a little bit about this mission that just passed and what happened if you're not too familiar with it. It's part of a NASA program to try and drive down the cost of sending payloads to the moon. They contracted some landers out to commercial companies as opposed to building out billion-dollar plus landers themselves. We're looking at low hundreds of millions from these commercial companies. It was considered very much a high-risk maneuver from NASA, hoping that it would succeed though. And this Odysseus lander, which is a Nova C class lander from Lunar, did make the attempt to land on the surface. We have a cool shot of it here with the Intuitive name, the moon in the background. And this craft had so many problems on the way to the moon, and the engineering team and the team at Intuitive Machines had to fight through a lot of issues, burn the midnight oil, do their best to get this thing on the ground and on the moon, which they did. They ended up on the moon, not completely right side up, but they were transmitting some faint data. Didn't end up completing all their missions, but it's widely considered to be a great achievement. And some of the things that happened you might not be too familiar with is they actually have a laser rangefinder on this lander that kind of tells it how far it is from the moon's surface and when to fire its landing thrusters and, how hard to fire those thrusters and that sort of thing. Apparently, there was a pin that was supposed to be removed from a safety switch before the launch, and an engineer neglected to unlock this safety switch and remove that pin, meaning they were not able to use their laser rangefinder that was supposed to be guiding them into land in order to check how far they were from the moon and all that kind of stuff. So that was obviously a huge problem. What they ended up doing was using some of the equipment on one of their payloads that they were planning to deliver to the moon to try and get an idea of how far they were from the moon and use that in its place. Quite a difficult solution, something they implemented on the fly while the spacecraft is literally on its way to the moon and orbiting the moon. So, it did come in a little harder than expected. One of the landing legs ultimately broke and it kind of tilted sideways, meaning the signals that they were sending back from the moon were kind of pointing the wrong direction. They were too faint, but really great troubleshooting by the team. And overall, I did come away pretty impressed that they at least got to the lunar surface. They were transmitting signals from the surface. And I think if this was a failure, it would be a bad sign for NASA's whole commercial lunar program. The fact that they got this far, really good for that program and bodes well for the future of Intuitive Machines. So just some interesting anecdotes on that mission. Now, high level, what is Intuitive Machines all about? Well, it's a space company whose vision is really all about the cis lunar economy in the future, or just like the space economy from the Earth to the moon, taking advantage of that in a variety of ways, which when I first heard about it, I thought, why limit yourself to the moon? I've gone through their investor presentation when they went public, and, I think I'll kind of buy this. And by the way, they have lots of industry experts and people who have worked for NASA, which is extremely key because NASA is really the primary customer for the whole company. So really key that they have those good relationships and trust with NASA. But basically, what they're saying is that there is going to be a new space race, and it's already underway, a 21st century space race that's really driving more investment in the moon. We've already seen it start. We have NASA's Artemis program underway, spending ramping up for that, and that program needs lots of support. Intuitive Machines is going to be bidding on a rover for the moon, building a rover. They have 3 more landers that are expected to go and attempt to land on the moon. They want to set up communication satellites around the moon, which will basically relay communications from the lunar surface to, Earth for NASA and other providers. And they're really just all about the new space race to the moon. And when you look at it, China and Russia are absolutely investing in going to the moon themselves, and U.S. doesn't want to be getting left behind. They don't want to be showed up. China and Russia are talking about having a research station on the moon, and yeah, it's, I think I will buy this thesis. I'll buy that the investment in going to the moon is heating up. There's a new space race, and there's lots of money up for grabs, and Intuitive Machines wants to be one of the prime contractors for that. I think I'll buy this thesis personally. Let me know if you think, this Artemis program might get canceled. This is risky. Maybe we won't end up going. Obviously, that can always be a concern, especially when politics come into it. We have an election coming up. But important to note, both political parties have kind of supported this Artemis mission of going back to the moon. So that is a little bit less risky, I would say. Just a quick article here with a cool picture as well of the lander on the moon firing its thrusters. You can see it does have a broken leg as it was trying to land properly. A lot of that comes down to not having that laser rangefinder working properly, so it came in hotter than it was supposed to come in. That at least should be a relatively easy fix, and hopefully the engineer doesn't lose his job from that one. That's a rough one. Imagine if you were that guy who was supposed to remove that safety pin and you didn't do it. Cool pictures from this program at least. So I wanted to take a look. Unfortunately, their Q4 earnings is still upcoming on March 21st. I'm definitely going to take a look at that when it comes out. Hopefully we'll get some more guidance for next year and some more details. Really looking forward to hearing this earnings, but we can at least look at Q3's earnings to get an idea of how the company's been doing. So this is obviously going back to about November, but as is common with these early stage space companies, they are burning money. So Q3 quarterly operating loss was $23.2 million. Their revenue was $12.7 million. So not currently a profitable company. They do have a road to climb in order to get to that point. And this is what concerns me a little bit here. Third quarter end cash balance was only $40 million. That's not a lot of money on the balance sheet at all. That has me a little scared. The capital expenditures for the quarter was $7.5 million. Cash used in operating activities was $7.2 million for the quarter. They do have a contract backlog of $135 million, which may not seem massive, but there is this big program they've kind of won from NASA, which is not included in this backlog number, so it's actually a little bit better than you'd think just looking at that number. Okay, on to the balance sheet. As I said, that 40 million number has me a little scared. I'll buy the thesis behind the company. I am impressed with the team's execution and how far they got on their first attempt on landing on the moon for NASA. There was certainly a lot of hype around it, but let's take a look at the balance sheet, see what's going on here. So quarterly, in the last quarter we have access to, which is again Q3, so back in the fall, they ended with a little over $40 million of cash on hand. They do have some long-term liabilities as well, which is pretty common for a company. Switching over to income statement here, going to a quarterly view for that last quarter, we can see gross profit was in the negative $13 million. Operating income or loss was negative $23 million. But here is where I get very confused. I'm still not sure what's going on here. They have this other income / expenses net line. Now, this is in the positive big time for some reason, and you can see that doesn't happen every quarter. Like in Q1, other income was negative $5 million. But for some reason, over the past 2 quarters, other income has been at $28 million and $39 million. Somehow, I don't know what other income is. I'm still trying to figure this out a little bit and why it doesn't fall under revenue or gross profit and what's going on here with this other income. We'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later. But that did pull up net income into a positive number, meaning they have EPS. And I have a lot of questions about this. Is this other income like a one-off? Is it just a random thing we don't count on for the future? Why is it so significant, even more than the total revenue for the company for the quarter? Like, what is going on here? It's such a big deal, makes such a big difference to the bottom line of the company. But going back to the balance sheet, we can see that their total current assets did drop from $50 million to $48 million at the end of the quarter. Cash and cash equivalents, of course, $40 million, and I think they got a new investor as well, they said, so that who invested like $20 million worth, so there was probably some dilution there as well. So yeah, I will say I'm quite concerned about this line of cash and cash equivalents being low, meaning they may have to continue to dilute us, and what's going on with the income statement and the other income line. Can we expect that to continue? I did check at the earnings call transcript for that Q3 and didn't really see a lot of mention of it, but I'm going to go over it more closely and listen to Q4's call to see if they have any more details on that. Let me know down in the comments if you have any thoughts on this other income line or any information. Again, I did actually talk to someone on Twitter about this a while ago. He's a viewer, maybe Michael, if you're watching. Hi, thanks for tuning in and talking to me about this. This was the quarter before, so Q2. I was trying to figure out what this other income was. Michael said it was a bit confusing for the character limit, but it had something to do with this OHMS 3 contract that they have kind of won with another company, but is not yet in the backlog, and revalue of compensation liability and a reclass from debt to equity of employees. So that's interesting. I still don't know exactly what it means and if you can rely on having a positive $30 million in this other income line going forward. Just not too sure on that. Looking at the market cap, it's only $159 million. This is a tiny company by market cap, so that could also be a bit of a concern. A lot of people, smaller investors, generally advise them to stay away from small cap companies and penny stocks, but it's a new Dave here, and I am open to investing in space companies that I like and believe in. So I'm not ready to throw out this company. I just need to understand the path to profitability a little bit more. What's going on with other income? When do they expect to get profitable? And some of these other things. But interestingly enough, price to sales. On that basis, we're only looking at a 1.32 price to sales multiple, which is actually generally quite cheap compared to other companies. If you look at something like a Rocket Lab here, their price to sales currently sitting at an 8.71. So you could make an argument on a price to sales basis that Intuitive Machines is very cheap even after they're still up considerably where they were before that lunar lander attempt happened, even though they have come back a little bit to Earth. So hopping over to the transcript of the earnings call, this is on Seeking Alpha, which, by the way, there is an affiliate link down in the description below to Seeking Alpha Premium. If you're interested, I do have a 20% coupon, I believe, to offer you if you use my link as opposed to just signing up directly from the internet. And of course, you doing so will help out the channel if you do happen to be interested in Seeking Alpha. It can be a pretty good resource at times. I do like being able to pull up the earnings calls and some of the rest. Anyway, the interesting question here around spending was, with a cash balance of now about 40 million as of Q3, would you mind reminding us of the run rate? Looks like the cash used in the quarter was about 7.2 million. So pretty low burn rate, but what is the expected rate as you get closer to these next upcoming moon missions? CFO, I believe, Eric Sally, said that that's a pretty good indication from an operating cash standpoint. There's not necessarily increased cash outflows associated with, I don't think that's emissions. That's probably supposed to be the missions specifically. Some costs related to launch, but then other costs associated with the missions are dying down at that point. So not a great answer in terms of giving us firm details on, the runway that is available to the company and when they'll need to raise more money. But it sounds like they're going to be using about 7 million per quarter, and they have about 40 million cash. So we're talking 5 or 6 quarters, maybe a year and a half of cash at that rate. But let me know if you read this a little bit differently. Definitely a more confusing balance sheet for me to read than I'm used to. There is this OMS 3 contract from NASA, which is a cost plus fixed fee, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, meaning to support the work related to the Joint Polar Satellite System. This is a $719 million contract, which is quite large. Now, Intuitive Machines won it basically combining with other companies, so it wasn't just Intuitive Machines on their own. We don't know, I think, for sure how much of that revenue they would be capturing, but I think they're the leader on the program, so presumably it would be a good amount. And this right here is, that number is 7 times almost the current backlog, maybe 6 times the current backlog. So very significant, this OMS 3 contract that doesn't show up under that backlog. Another thing of note is that Congress just recently passed their fiscal year 2024 spending bill for NASA. So checking how things are looking on the political front, they're providing NASA with a budget that is 8.5% below their original request and 2% lower what NASA received in 2023, even before adjusting from inflation. So that tells me, spending is a little tight right now. Unfortunately, NASA's budget is going to be a little tighter. They won't be spending as heavily. However, apparently most of this is actually going to be pulled from NASA's planetary science program, specifically the Mars sample return, which, if you're not familiar with, there was already a lander that went to Mars and drilled these little core samples in Mars and has them in capsules, but they have no way of getting them back to Earth yet, and Mars sample return was supposed to figure that out, and there's all sorts of problems around that, over budget and all the rest. Not too sure what's going to end up happening with that mission, but I don't think a lot of the spending change has to do with Artemis or the moon or necessarily impacting Intuitive Machines. Okay, so now hopping over to Interactive Brokers, the broker I do use for my investing, was curious to see what the analysts kind of think about this company, where they're seeing it going, what their projections are. So on an annual basis, in terms of gross margin, they're looking for a positive gross margin of 2% for 2024. So that's quite a significant improvement over the negative 18% for past year. We're still waiting on that Q4 to firm up those numbers. Revenue, again, we're looking for 2023, 70 million, and then all the way up to $325 million. So that's a massive growth off of just $70 million. And then more modest growth from there, 350, 400, 455. So really the big jump in earnings is projected to be this year, which could be a little bit of a bullish reason to buy this year if they do execute on those numbers and we see that kind of growth. In terms of earnings before interest and depreciation, we're seeing that go positive this year in 2024 with just under 100 million in EBIT. Now this part here a little bit more concerning, especially given their current, $40 million balance sheet. We're seeing that they're not expected to be net income positive until 2027, which is a long way to make it if you have only $40 million of cash on hand. Looking at negative 50 for 2024, then negative 27, then negative 4.5, and then we're looking at positive 14. So in terms of net income, at least a little bit further out than that earnings before interest and depreciation number. On the analyst ratings target, the average target we're looking at is $13, which is obviously well above where they're trading today. That's 120% upside. The company has 4 buy ratings. That's it. No holds, no sells. Just all buy. Some of these analysts rated fairly highly by tip ranks. We have a couple 5-star analysts here with quite bullish price estimates. So that's kind of the research I have done on the company today. Sorry, I don't have a firm buy or sell recommendation for you on this one. I was really just kind of sharing my thoughts in real time as I go through and do my own research on the company, give you a little bit of a glimpse into how I do my research and how I think about these things. Obviously, I'm not done on this company. Need to understand what's going on with that other income line and need to understand the path to profitability a little better with that $40 million number on the balance sheet. But I am impressed with the team. I do buy this thesis of the moon being more of a focus these days and a new space race with China taking place. I think that's very much underway, so I agree with them on that one. On the risk side of things, we do have that they're heavily reliant on NASA as their main customer, and that's not likely to change in the future, so that could be considered a risk. But it does help that they have so many employees and managers who are ex-NASA, and they do seem to be doing well in getting contracts. So the path forward for me is I'm going to continue to do some more research on this company. I might think about adding some shares if it drops a bit lower, although on a valuation basis, that price to sales does look pretty low. I might even consider trading it when that next lunar lander launches. We saw the previous landing attempt cause the stock to have a massive spike, so maybe I'll play around a little bit, put a little bit of money on the line before that next lander takes off, just to see what happens for fun. Who knows? Could do well, could do poorly. Obviously, if there's a disaster, then that would be bad, but I think the team has proven themselves to a large degree. Let me know if you're an investor in Lunar, if you're interested in them, or aka Intuitive Machines, what you think about the company and the future of the space industry on the moon. I'll check out your replies in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Very much appreciated. If you haven't already subscribed, do hit that subscribe button and like if you're interested in seeing more investing in the space industry content, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.